So a quick recap of the preceding episodes. I always start with the obvious, that we should never forget that the United States and the European Union share the deepest, widest, strongest economic, trade and investment link in the world by far. The transatlantic relationship is an artery of world trade, makes up 17% of EU trade. Now, we have the new US measures in place. In terms of the level of duties, we are now faced with 50% on steel, aluminium and derivatives, 25% on car and car parts, plus the MFN duty, and now 30%, a 10% universal tariff for the time being, that President Trump, as you know, has indicated in a letter that it would go up to 30% on the 1st of August. These levels of duties cover 70% of the EU exports to the US, in other words, 380 billion. But there are a certain number of ongoing investigations by the US administration under the Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act. There's 7 now in total, which cover commercial aircraft, jet engines and parts, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, critical minerals, copper, timber and lumber, and truck parts. If the administration, if the president decided to impose duties also on these products, then it's 97% of the EU exports to the US that would be covered by additional duties. Now, as you know, the Commissioner, in particular Commissioner Šefčovič, has engaged very intensively with the US. I think we have calculated that now we are at 10 trips to Washington, D.C. So far this year, without counting the phone calls and the DVCs and so on. And despite, and I stress, the advanced stage of the negotiations, which we carried out in good faith, the US has, or President Trump has sent this letter announcing the position of a 30% baseline duty as of 1st of August. Chairman, you have been on the record indicating that this letter is unjustified, unproductive, and doesn't help finding a negotiated outcome. President von der Leyen is on record saying that we have taken note of this letter, that 30% of duties disrupt value chains to the detriment of businesses and citizens on both sides of the Atlantic. But she has also insisted, and we have insisted also with the member states, that the priority remains to negotiate. So we remain ready to finding an agreement with the US. So again, the priority is to remain calm, united, and pursue the EU interest. How do we want to do this? In 4 ways. First of all, we want to continue the negotiations. There's paradoxically a lot of time until the 1st of August. We have been working very diligently towards an agreement, respecting the red lines, the principled positions that we have agreed, including with you, for example, on not engaging in negotiations on the EU legislation. Now we want to continue doing these negotiations. But then, of course, we have to be prepared for any scenarios, and this is why we have to continue the work concerning rebalancing measures or countermeasures, whatever you want to call them. But we have to be clear that any countermeasures must remain a means to an end and not an end in themselves. We should never forget that tariffs, whether the US impose them or we impose them, remain costly for the economy. So what we want to do is the following. We have decided to postpone, as Chairman, as you were saying, the entry into force of the measures that had already been agreed with the Member States, the so-called steel measures, again, because we want to keep the space for a negotiation. But we have also concluded the public consultation that we launched in May on a package of products covering 95 billion euros worth of EU imports from the US. So we have concluded that. We have done an analysis. And so whenever we feel that the time is ripe to proceed to measures concerning that list, if you want, the administration is ready to do that. President von der Leyen kept on saying that everything is on the table. So indeed, I can also confirm that the administration is practically ready on also considering measures that do not cover goods. Yeah. The second point is that we have to continue deepening the partnerships with like-minded countries. So we have to continue talking to other trading partners that are also on the receiving end. And what is very, very important is that, of course, we must go much further than just talking. So we need to move forward decisively with the trade agreements which have been finalized and need to be ratified, and bring ongoing negotiations to conclusion and fruition. You have heard over the weekend that President von der Leyen has reached a political agreement on the negotiations with Indonesia, with the President of Indonesia. And, of course, you know that we have concluded the preparatory work to be able to present the agreements with Mercosur and the modernized agreement with Mexico to the Council and the Parliament to conclude these agreements. But we also need to forge ahead with the ongoing negotiations, be them with India, the United Arab Emirates, the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, and others. Finally, we need to continue to be very vigilant on the risk of circumvention and trade diversion, because, of course, what the United States is doing is that it is changing the terms of trade, so there is a risk of trade diversion. So we have set up, as you know, a dedicated import surveillance task force, which is now operational, and we continue now monitoring the situation. And we remain ready to apply the available tools in our trade instrument toolbox should we see that the legal conditions are met to intervene in case of trade diversion. This is where we are. If you want, the summary is that we want to continue giving the priority to a negotiated outcome. So we're very mobilized to this. The contacts with the United States administration continue. We have done very good progress in the negotiations so far, and we still have a bit of time. 2 weeks is an incredibly long time in the current situation with the US to find an agreement in principle with the US. Thank you.